Thank you so much for watching my show, William Wallace for America. As I was traveling to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, about a month or so ago for the Republican National Convention, I met somebody there that I want you to meet in today's show and interview because when I watched her and her friend, they were dressed up in these wonderful outfits, which you'll see one of them over her shoulder. You can tell how passionate she is, not only about America, but freedom in our country. And when you hear her story, it is going to multiply why she does what she does. Thank you so much, Sara Brady, Park Mom, for being on the show today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome. But I gotta tell you, again, I think when people see the passion in your eyes that I saw as you talk about not only our country and freedom, but when you dress up like that dress in the back, I think people are going to see. But some people don't know who Park Mom is. They don't know why you're nicknamed Park Mom. And even though I know, and a lot of people know, I'm always surprised at how many people aren't aware of what happens to people. Can you tell us that story?
Absolutely. Yeah, Park Mom is a name that I garnered back in April of 2020. So, if, we take a time machine and we travel back to that time, Idaho had been closed down due to the C word, and we were in our shutdown about 6 weeks, and Governor Little had basically issued. Governor Little's the governor of Idaho. He issued a stay-at-home order, and this particular day was a nice sunny day. And probably about a week prior, I'd been invited to a play date at the park. And I just want to make a clarification: our parks were open. You could sit at the picnic tables, you could play basketball, but you couldn't play on the playground equipment, which, everything was kind of arbitrary back then. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I didn't think I was going to go. Actually, kind of forgot about it. And it rolls around to this date, April 21st of 2020. And I had flipped open my computer. I was just getting done doing some home improvement, and I saw that people were at the park, and this girl's like, "Oh, it's a nice sunny day," and she kind of pans out and shows all these kids playing, and she's like, "Come, come to the play date." And so I went. It was only about it was with close to my neighborhood, so I took two of my four children, two of the middle children, and we headed over there. And I wasn't like, you know, I hadn't seen people for a while, right? Because back then, right, you go weeks at a time. People weren't really visiting each other. Our schools were closed down, and so I thought, I'm going to go. And I get there, and it's a beautiful day, and all these kids are playing basketball and on the playground equipment. People are sitting at the picnic table. So somebody has gone and ripped off the tape. Okay, I don't know who. And I get there and everyone else's kids are playing. So I'm like, okay, kids, go and play, right? Like, because I'm thinking it's right. If it's safe to play at the basketball hoops, and you can go to Home Depot and Lowe's and all these other things, like,
Right.
I can't really wrap in my mind why playground equipment is all of a sudden the most dangerous thing. But anyway, so I'm there for a few minutes. I can't remember exactly how long, and three police officers show up, and I actually didn't have my phone with me. Ended up giving my husband a phone call. I was like, "Hey, there's three officers here," and my husband doesn't work for that police department. They're neighboring police departments. But I was like, "I'll just, I'll call you back." And I hung up the phone. And as as someone who's been involved a little bit in politics, and being concerned about where our nation
Right.
is headed, especially like my community, I'm not really one to shy away from confrontation when it comes to things that don't make sense.
Right.
I will call you out on things that don't make sense. So these three officers are basically, telling everyone to to get off the playground equipment, and then also they want people to get off just the area around the playground equipment, which had never been wrapped up or closed off. Okay, so again, parks are open, the whole park is open, but the playground equipment is the only thing that they delineated with tape to say you can't be there. Anyway, so I start asking questions with a few other moms, and I'm like, why is the playground equipment closed when we can go to Home Depot and Walmart? And
Right.
And it was just kind of conversation like that. It's just kind of off the fly, right? It was just off the hip.
Right.
I wasn't there to prove a point. I literally was just like, we pay taxes here. I don't understand really what's happening. Anyway, at some point, an officer who had probably was a little bit, it's actually was a sergeant, was a little bit more heavy-handed in the whole situation, right? He points at me directly and says, I'm giving you 5 seconds to leave. Now, again, leaving meant stepping a few feet away to on pavement or grass. Okay. I was never playing on the playground equipment. I was never touching a closed area
Right.
of the park, right? And so at this point, as he's pointing to me, I am just like, there's all of these things that are flashing back in my head from the last 6 weeks, right? Things like the sheriff's department brought in a woman who to cut their hair, but hairdressers were not non-essential, right? There was the whole
Right.
essential versus non-essential thing, right? And my husband being
Right.
a police officer, quite frankly, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that my husband gets to work, but I have friends who are like, they're shut down basically, right? So anyway,
Right.
at this point, I just had enough. I have just like, you're pointing at me. You're basically you're essentially threatening me
Right.
with arrest if I don't
And he didn't
either.
recognize you that your husband was a police officer? He didn't recognize you?
No, no, because it was a neighboring but and
Okay.
I do not announce my connection. I feel like that's we don't
Right.
you should not use
Right.
your that to me is an inappropriate thing. I want you
Right.
to treat me the exact same way. If I'm breaking the law, don't
Right.
give me special privilege, treat me exactly the same. So I have a personal policy. I don't do that. So I didn't announce myself either, which I think also annoyed people.
Right.
But I do what I think is the right thing to do. So he basically singles me out. And in this moment, William, I'm just like, you know what? Fine. Arrest me for being in a park, do it. And I turn around, he cuffs me up, hauls me off to the car.
Wait. So now where are your kids? I mean, what happens to your kids?
So that's a great question. So luckily, I was around other parents who knew who I was, could identify my children. At no point, as far as I'm aware, did the police officers ever say, or, are her kids okay? They didn't ask me if I was okay with who they were with, anything like that. So, and I think it's just here I'm thinking again, I having been married to a police officer for so many years, I don't really, to me the real criminals are pedophiles, murderers, rapists, that I
Right.
don't see myself as someone who's just needs to be taken to jail. Now, so I get put in the car, they take me to jail. Eventually my husband comes out and bonds me out, and about a week later, so I was charged with a misdemeanor trespass, which carries up to, I believe, 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine. And this is the first time that I've ever been charged with a crime. I think actually, I'm sorry, once when I was younger, my parents let me drive without a license. We lived on a farm. I got pulled over and I think I got a ticket, but I don't even know if it's on my record. It probably isn't. But anyway, my however many adult years, this is the first time I've been charged with a crime. And I've taken my kids to a playground, right? So again, my I'm still to this day, William, 4 years later, I'm like, how did that happen? I still don't understand how moms who are
Right.
asking questions in a playground turn into criminals. I don't really know. So anyway, so I get charged with this, and about within the week or so, I get a letter in the mail, and basically it's a notification letting me know that the Attorney General of Idaho has taken my case, Lawrence Wasden. Now the reason why my case could not be prosecuted in my area is because it was a conflict of interest, because the two police departments work too close together. So my case, it was actually not appropriate for those departments to be prosecuting my case. So it needed to get sent out
And
for conflict of interest.
that's because your husband was a police officer.
Correct, in that area, right? Because the department he worked for was part of prosecution for those cases. So
Okay.
instead of though sending it to just another county that was on the same level, they sent it straight to the Attorney General of Idaho, Lawrence Watson, okay, who is a Republican, and I do air quotes because Republican, and you'll see why I do air quotes
Right.
hearing the rest of
Yeah.
the story. I don't want to bore you with too many details, but essentially my case was picked up by him. It was prosecuted. My very first trial, if I remember correctly, because this again, we're going on years now. My first trial was set in August of 2021, I believe. I've got to think about this. Was it 2021? And I might get it mixed up. It must have been, yeah, it must have been
Right.
21. Yeah, so in August of 21. Well, about 2 weeks before that trial kicked off, my lawyer called me and told me that because of COVID, they were going to be canceling court again. So they'd already done a long. The reason why it already took a year to get to that point, or over a year, is because put they had put court on hold because of COVID. Right. So your right to a speedy trial,
Right.
yeah, you don't get that. Gone. Poof. No more rights.
Yeah.
So at this point, I've spent about $18,000 of donor money. I'm exhausted. I am just like, we've got to this point,
Yeah.
it gets rescheduled, and I'm like, you know what though? If I come this far, I can go further. That's what I'm just always like. If I come this far,
Right.
what's a little bit more? And
Exactly.
I did have some people trying to encourage me. They were like, Sarah, you've proven your point. It's okay if you plead guilty and take this stress off your plate. But I'm like, here's the deal though. Number one, I didn't do anything to prove my point. If me just living in America gets me arrested for taking my kids to a playground,
Actually,
there's there's no point I'm proving this. Oops.
yeah.
Right? This is the state of Idaho. I'm just trying to live the American dream.
Right.
So fact oh go ahead.
Okay, you there? I
Oh yep.
lost you
Did
for
we
a
have a
second.
lag in communication?
Well, what's interesting is we went back to the bad audio. But so you're just living in America and go from there?
Yeah, so at this point I know it's going to be a while before another trial is scheduled. So um sorry, I'm trying to remember, trying to go back.
No, that's okay. I get what they did to you is basically coming out now. All of that is about one control because it still amazes me how many people and we take those police officers and look. I back the blue 100%. I'm all in favor of them, but the ones that would have enforced a law like this at the park seems to me like they probably had a little bit of pressure coming down on them to be able to enforce laws because and their jobs may have, we don't know. I'm not giving them credit, so to speak, but maybe their jobs were threatened because hey, we got to enforce these laws. You lose your job. Joe, you're 19 years, one more year you retire, you better enforce those COVID laws kind of thing. And again, I'm just, kind of brainstorming out loud, but the one of the net results I think that happened in a lot of scenarios like yours and all the other thousands and countless stories of people that got in trouble for violating these random laws was the confusion and the pressure that from that causes these interruptions in our lives. And I think it's intentional. It's not just what we experienced wasn't just about control. It was about them learning how to, for lack of a better word, a form of psyops, if you will, that puts people in a state of confusion, makes you want to give up your rights. And you're still feeling the after effects from that. So you go to trial. Eventually, after basically that rescheduling makes you want to give up. It's another form of just relinquish your freedoms so that way this will go away. But you kept fighting. So what happened eventually at your first trial?
Yeah, so eventually, so I actually never got to trial. I never went to trial. So December of 21. I actually I think there was another trial that was set up in January of 21. February of 21. That was rescheduled. So we're August 21. That's rescheduled, and then we're moving into I think we went over 6 or 7 months with COVID restrictions on court. Sadly, in December of 21, my father passed away. So that the stress of also having a court case, there was just a lot to handle with
Right.
that. But in December of 21, we had a so we would still so this is a side thing too. I mean, they this happens and it creates basically additional stress in your life, right? Because you basically have an option. You
Right.
comply, which makes your life easier. Although,
Right.
but if you comply, you're agreeing that you're in the wrong, right? And I
Right.
still to this day, I know that I did nothing wrong. It doesn't matter how many charges you can give me that day. I know in my heart I did nothing wrong that day. And so even, people are like, well, you told the cop to arrest you. But I'm like, being sassy, or being, if I came to you and I was like, give
Right.
me your wallet, William, and you were like, no, go ahead and do it. Like, come and take it. That's what this is, right? That's
Right.
like a come and take me. That
Exactly.
is, I'm not
Yeah, come and
telling you
take
what
it.
to
Yeah.
do. I'm saying I dare you to come and do it. Fine, go ahead and arrest me. And so I think
Right.
sometimes people don't understand the connotation of that. It wasn't like I'm not following him around the playground saying, please arrest me. I was like, when he threatened me with it, I was like, you know what? Go ahead and do it. Because I'm just
Right.
was so put out. So anyway, so in December of 21, I was given a mediation judge, because typically during court cases, to do a mediation judge is optional, but they were actually um not forcing, but basically making people do it. I mean, I guess it was a
Here's your
type of force if you didn't have an option. I did
here's
have
your
an
choice.
option.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah. Well, and so I was like, you know what? And the judge said, well, I thought you didn't want mediation. I said, well, I think it's at least in the best interest of the taxpayers at this point, because you have to remember, right? So the state of Idaho has unlimited funds and resources. You, no individual, no individual, in fact, I would even say no corporation has the same amount of resources that the government has, because the government
Right.
has always the taxpayer pockets. They can just keep they can
Exactly.
take money. Even
Right.
corporations don't really have that, right? Because their money is not taken by force, right?
Right.
So anyway, so we have a mediation judge, and this mediation judge, essentially, it was probably about an hour long conversation, and I start explaining to him what happened, because see, on the record, not the whole truth was actually put on the record. Even in the arrest thing, they weren't actually completely honest with what had happened. So I mean, at one point, they Meridian Police Department actually put out a statement. I believe it said on their website, it said that I had ripped off the tape. And so they were trying to make me look bad, right?
Right.
I believe they were trying to defame my character, whether intentionally or not. So anyway, at the end of this probably hour long or so thing, the judge is like, because there's really not a lot to negotiate from, right? When you have a misdemeanor, basically he's like, well, let's. I said, he said, well, let's do. Can we do a fine, like a fine, just like a fine, like a ticket, like if you had a parking ticket, right? Something equivalent. So it's
Right.
not going to be a misdemeanor, right? And so basically, at the end of it, close to the end of it, the state of Idaho, the attorney says, okay, we will do, we'll take it down to a fine. Finally, she gets this approval, and this is what I said to them. I said, listen, um, my innocence is worth more than $50 to me. In fact, just the fact I go, if this is about money, and the city of Meridian or the state of Idaho needs $50 just on the fly, I'll give you $50. But I'm not going to plead guilty to something that I didn't do. That's it's not wrong. I didn't do anything that's wrong. And I go, I'll tell
Right.
you what, drop the charges, and I will go out publicly and say the state of Idaho finally has done the right thing. They declined my offer. And so the case continues on. Okay. So I'll bore you with more details, but
Yeah,
essentially,
no,
the
I love
case,
hearing this because this is what ignited your passion that we're going to talk about in a minute. So what happened after you 'cause I love the fact that you're standing for freedom, not just your freedom, but you're basically standing in protecting freedom for others that may follow in future instances, when they try to do this again and force people to give up their freedom, because it's one stepping stone at a time. So you're protecting your ground. So what happened after you declined that offer?
yeah, so I declined, and then the case continues on, and it actually went, eventually in, so this is now we're in 2022. Okay. I can't believe it went on this long. So in 2022, I want to say it was in, initially, we had something scheduled for July. It was a motion to dismiss. I had a new set of lawyers. That was rescheduled because the attorney had a conflicting date, and I just rolled my eyes. Was like, of course, you guys aren't ready for whatever.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just like, you are just making yourselves look worse every single day.
Bring
The
it.
longer you drag me through this, but because you at this point, a lot of the stuff is coming out about what happened in
Right.
COVID, right? All of this stuff, and so I'm over here being like,
Yeah, now
let
they're
Sister
seeing the
Rachel
ridiculous.
continue.
Yeah, now they're on. Now it's almost like you by you dragging it out, fighting for freedom. It almost gets it to a point where they even realize how ridiculous they're being. Right.
Yeah. So yeah. So
So
this is yeah. So this is like August. So I will pause though. In May of 22, we had a primary, and Raul Labrador, who eventually did become the new Attorney General, won the primary against Lawrence Wasden. Okay, which was a huge deal. Raul Labrador is a previous congressman. I don't know if you know who he is. And while I never spoke to him about my case, I was hopeful that he would get into office and say this is ridiculous. That was my hope,
right,
right? So then we have this motion to dismiss. Essentially, the judge comes back and he says no, right? To the motion to dismiss. So this is now let's see, no, so November, Raul Labrador won his seat for Attorney General of Idaho, which was very exciting. And then now December, I started prepping for trial. Trial was finally set for January of 23, end of like third week in January of 23. So I'm prepping. I'm like, I'm really hopeful at this point. I'm really hopeful. I'm like, yes, finally, at least I'll get my day in court. I'm actually getting ready for people to take care of my kids. I know that I'll probably get some jail time because a friend of mine had banged on a bucket and she got a week in jail. So I knew, sorry, she banged out a bucket in front of an official's home on the public sidewalk, and she got, I believe it was, oh, I'm trying to remember, it might have been disorderly conduct, but they were real conduct, but they were really trying to punish people who were trying to speak out, right? So anyway,
right.
I'm prepping basically for a possibility that they might throw me in jail because again, my case has gone the longest. It's been one of the biggest cases, if not the biggest case in Idaho in regards to COVID. And so January, geez, I want to say it was January 5th. I'd have to go back and check my notes, but it was within the first week of January. Raul Labrador is sworn into office. And I'm actually headed to another court hearing the day, and I'm driving, and my lawyer says, "Hey, where are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm driving, right?" Because court was at this point about an hour from me.
Right.
He said, "I've got some news for you," and he said, "Your case has been dismissed." And I just
Congrats.
and I even to this day I can feel the feelings of just this relief, right? Because it had gone on for so long and over something that was so
Yeah.
ridiculous. I still to this day I'm like, but praise God from whom all blessings flow because um
Amen.
amen. That was finally dropped. I think by the end of it, I think it was over $50,000 in lawyer fees. And this is the really interesting thing though, because when you go through something like that,
Right.
it's so difficult in the middle of it, right? And then when it's over,
Right.
and then, now I can look back and see all of the amazing miracles, and I can see how God really refined who I am.
Right.
And I can see that while, I never want anything, I don't want America to go worse in the hole. I don't want America to go down, I don't want to see that. But the
Right.
thing is I do have some reassurance knowing, well, this is who I was during this. And there's some hope for myself and to know that in the future, if I get put into the same or worse circumstances, I'll have another opportunity to do my very best to try. Because, so what people don't realize is like, well,
God prepared you.
God prepared me. And, like,
God prepared you.
and for what I wasn't prepared for, though, I was able to build up the character and the fortitude to be able, because now I've just learned so many things about being able to be, positive during negativity. So I will say one of the huge blessings that I feel like was a huge blessing was it brings you, it can either break you or you can allow it to bring you closer to God and to who you truly are. Because I think as you go through things and you get closer to God, you get to discover yourself and who you really are and who God
Right.
intended you to be. And I remember this was in summer of 21, so it had been about a year I'd been going through it. And at this point, I had no idea that I
Right.
would go another almost 2 years, right?
Yeah.
But this is about a year in, and I said a prayer to God. I was like, God, why is this going on? Still, we're a year in, and I should have had my
Right.
speedy trial 6 months in, and and this
Right.
impression that I got back was, sometimes people have to go through these things so it can expose who the wicked actors are. And that was such a
Right.
mind thing to me that I was like, well, of course, God,
Exactly.
because if I don't continue to be in this position, we'll never see how evil the other people, we won't see it. And so there has to be someone who basically, people have to be willing to be a martyr for a good
Right.
cause. They have to be willing to sacrifice. They have to be willing to give up. It would have been nicer for me to be able to just work a job and bring in extra income instead of spending all this time. But
Right.
and I'm sorry, I've probably been talking too much, but it
Oh,
was
no,
real
this is
safe.
a no, no, go, no, you finish your statement.
I will just say this is I am grateful. I am so grateful, and I'm grateful that I'm up to a place that I was able to grow enough that I can look back and say, wow, what an amazing experience that God gave me the opportunity to say yes to, right? Because God gives us free will.
Right.
I could have said no. I could have said, I'm pleading guilty, this is ridiculous. I'll pay the misdemeanor fine, maybe I'll spend some time in jail, I'll just whatever, I'll walk away from this. But the thing is I think when you say yes to those hard things, um, there's just so many amazing things that get to happen. So I don't know. I would
Do you
encourage
know,
your viewers to say yes to the hard things.
but here's something that's interesting. That police officer, when he pointed at you, okay, you're standing in an area, just what you said, literally feet. I'm kind of, I know we've already talked about this, but there's a reason for me to bringing it back up. So you were standing within feet of where you had just moved, you took a couple steps. And when he picked you, it was almost like not, I'm not saying he was God. It's almost like that same finger from God saying, I need you to be involved. I need you to be able to point out where these wicked, evil, bad, stupid laws are, because you, by using you, it shines a light on how ridiculous some of these laws were, or most all these laws were, for that matter, all of them. And that, while it was that police officer pointing at you, it was almost as impactful as God coming and saying, it's your turn to be involved. And so my question for you is, while you said you were always aware of politics and you're kind of aware before, and you were always somebody who loved America, you know, do you think it was that moment that really catapulted you in a way that you said, wait a minute, I've been kind of a, love America, America first kind of gal, going getting involved, but now I'm being catapulted, into a situation that I'm going to use to really do things for other people, to be able to spread the passion and make other people realize that you have to be involved? Was it that moment when the police officer said you and you got picked?
So well, I'll be really honest with you. I've always lived America. In my early 20s, I was pretty disconnected from anything political or government oriented. At one point, I probably couldn't even tell you who the governor of Idaho was. I didn't know. I didn't care. When I did start voting, um, I would just vote if there was an R next to the name, I would vote.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. You sometimes just don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
that's who I was. I was someone who didn't know what I
Yeah.
didn't know. And as time went on, there was a few things that came out. Like before this park thing happened, I actually the West Data Public School in Boise was trying to force me. Well, I mean, they weren't forcing me; they were coercing me to sign a piece of paper. It was a vaccine exemption form, and they were trying to coerce me, basically saying your kid can't go to school if you don't sign it. Well, I knew the law too well. So there have been moments before the park incident. I'll be a full disclosure on that. And at the time when COVID hit, I literally was like, this is not my hill to die on. I really felt like I should just pull back. what my hill to die on would have been the fact that they were closing down churches. That was a hill that I was willing to be like, I'll go to jail for it, right? I didn't think going to the playground that day was a go to jail moment. I didn't think it would ever end up there. I didn't think, I mean, I had gone very innocently to the park. And, and the news tries to make me
Right.
look like, oh, she's this anti vaxxer, which I'm not. I'm pro parental choice and transparency for the government. But, they were trying to make it look like, here's the deal. I'm not above it. If I had felt called to go to a playground and do a rally or a protest, I'm not above it. The point is that day I went without my hair hardly being combed. I probably hadn't showered in a few days. Like, this is back again where there's a
Let me
shutdown. Who
Google
wants to?
your I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna
you can
Google
Google
your
my
arrest picture. Hang on.
go. Yeah, go ahead. Google my arrest picture. You'll get a good. You got to put it side by side too. And the funny thing is my sisters were like, "Yeah, we know you didn't do it on purpose because we saw your mug shot." I was like, "Yeah, see." So anyway, so no, I would say before that, and the thing is, you know what? God maybe was calling me to take action and I didn't hear him because just I was probably so mentally caught up in what was going on with COVID and like I'm like, is this an end time apocalypse thing? Like I'm looking around being like, um, and obviously we I determined at some point that it wasn't because of all the things that were happening. I mean, I had a friend that called me that said, yeah, they so and so was like, I think it was their father or someone was in a car accident and they listed COVID as the reason. And obviously a car accident is not a reason.
Right.
Like that's not, you don't die from
Right.
COVID in a car accident. They had died in the car accident. So I knew that there was stuff that was happening, but I do believe in that moment, and I'm being counted down to. I think that God put the words in Officer Fiscus's mouth, the exact thing that needed to be said for me to go, I'm done. I'm done, and
Right.
you can just take me to jail. And so, because for me,
Like I
I
said,
don't have anything.
when he pointed at
Yeah.
you, and those words came out of the mouth, you heard it.
Yeah, I was told, yeah, I'm singled out, and I'm like, what? And so I really, I think God has a sense of humor, and I think he knew he just we just need to poke our buttons just a little bit. There has to be something that just makes her go, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done.
Yeah.
Fine, take me to jail. What's the worst that's going to happen? If you want to take me to jail, I guess if this is fine, we're all criminals here. Then we'll all go to jail. And so I think he just knew that was there was a button that needed to be pushed, and Officer Fiscus was the person that could push that button in that moment with those words, threatening to arrest me in front of my kids. And that's, um,
I keep
yeah.
wanting to
And then,
call. I keep wanting to call him. I keep wanting to call him Officer Friendly, but you.
oh, we'll call him Officer
But
Unfriendly because he was very unfriendly, at least to me that day.
so obviously this sparked a passion in your heart. So you get through the you're on the you get you hike the mountain, you go over the mountain, you come down the other side, and now I want to talk about your passion, how that ignited your passion, and what you've done since. I know you've been involved in a court case or two, helping others. Tell us about what you can about that, because I don't want to hurt their case. How you're using
Yeah.
the passion welled up, and then we'll talk about what you do with your dresses and your reason for dressing up. And how and why you do that. Let's talk about how it might seem odd. Look, there's countless stories about people who have stupid stories about what happened for them during COVID rules. There's lots of people that are doing things with their passion, but what I like to do is talk about the individual, because somebody may connect with you. You may be an example to get others involved. You might be that little pebble that gets thrown in the still waters, that creates a ripple that makes others get involved. And that's where I think you're being used. And so I want to talk about that. So where did you go from there?
Okay, so I took about 6 months to maybe close to a year off, and maybe not off. I just really slowed down. When you go through and then it stops, there is probably some trauma or PTSD, and so I just kind of backed off a little bit. Not, I just was not as I was not exerting my energy to the same point. I just felt like God was giving me permission to take a step back, take a break. Now I've always been someone who I want to be involved. That just tends to be me. And but yes, it for sure going through the judicial system And sometimes I would call it the injustice system, because there are some things about it that, at least, that occurred with me and that I saw happen, that were unjust. It just, I can't call it anything else. Like, I think the Emperor Has No Clothes is probably a book about me, because I can't say things that I don't believe to be not true or true. But so I had a friend that she had gone to jail for a week over banging on a bucket on a public sidewalk on a disorderly conduct, I think, of what it was. I had somebody else who also was part of that crowd banging on a bucket, and in the midst of him being found guilty, the judge basically was sentencing him and gave him a full 6 months. I think initially he was going to have a month or something. I think she gave him an additional 5 months because he refused to take a thinking heirs course. That was pretty alarming to me, and so I really think anybody, especially if you've never been involved with the justice system, I think people should go in and watch. I mean, we should be having citizen court watchers just going in and watching, because there's really interesting things, A, that happen, and B, it's good just to help government have transparency and see what's going on. But currently, I'm kind of watching a case back a couple of years ago. It was actually in 2020 as well, and hopefully I get the story right. But basically, Sarah Findley, who's owner of Big City Coffee, she had a main location downtown Boise, and then she had an opportunity to have like a kind of a satellite, I think, location at Boise State University. And it was going through the process of, I believe, opening up there. One of the students, whose name I cannot remember, and they might have been on the student council, but anyway, a student, I believe, had done a post of some sort of social media post, basically um, saying how they weren't going to be supportive of Sarah Finley and Big City Coffee, and I believe this student was part of a marginalized, like, student body group.
And
Anyway,
what was the
don't
reason? And what was the reason they weren't being supportive?
because she had this little flag that was in the window at the main location, not at BSU. At the main location, it was basically a sticker that was it was like a thin blue line. I believe also a or a firefighter support flag. So it's that black and white flag. It's not an American flag, but it looks
Right,
like an American flag. It's black and white, and then it's got a blue line. I think half of it had a red. A red. I've never seen the picture, the
right,
actual picture, but I don't think it was very big. Anyway, there was all this hullabaloo. And if you remember back in 2020, it was not okay to go to a playground peacefully with your children, but it was okay to burn down cities and flip over police cars and be violent and destroy things, apparently. And I say that with sarcasm. Please don't want
right.
your viewers to think that I'm taking that seriously. But um anyway, Sarah Finley was also engaged to a police officer who had, in the line of duty, almost died, lost his leg, and they were engaged. Anyway, she's just very pro law enforcement. I mean, really, everyone should
Right,
be pro law enforcement, and
right,
right, and
exactly.
good law enforcement, right? That should be the assumption. And yes, there are good cops and bad cops, and good lawyers and bad lawyers, and good doctors and bad doctors. Like, I the fact that
Right,
we have to even, like, we have to even think about these things or say these things. But anyway, she was basically not, the way I see it, she was not supported. And in one of these meetings that Sarah Finley, Big City Coffee, had with BSU and its leaders, or the people who she had contracts with, at the end of the basically this meeting, it's basically like, we need to part ways. And that's not a quote, but part ways, I believe, was in the meeting. And she had spent all of this money, all this time, all this resources. And here's the deal, like, you have someone, like, but both views should be being respected. Both
right.
parties should feel like they're not being silenced. But
Like the right sort of bridge.
but we shouldn't be scaring off a business because they
Right,
have views that are, again, like, here's the deal. Let's reverse this. If this had been someone who had an LGBTQ flag in their window, and it was a Christian government, paid for school, like, if the roles were reversed, it'd be interesting
right,
to see how that would play out. That's the thing. I mean, let's watch how those play out. So
right,
anyway, she
right.
is suing now. Sarah Finley with Big City Coffee is suing um, Boise State University. And so she has about 3 days left, I believe. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes longer, because It's been quite the lengthy trial. I want to say she's suing for over, I want to say 40 or 45 million dollars. It's in the millions of dollars. Anyway, so we'll see how that turns out. It's been pretty, it's very interesting. I actually had a lady who I don't know very well, but she supposedly was a lawyer on the case, and she said she had sent me a message and was basically putting down Sarah Finley. She's like, well, she voted for Biden and she's not really conservative, but here's the deal with him. You don't have to be a conservative for me to support your cause. That's the thing. If I see
Right,
something that's unjust, it's my prerogative if I want to support you. Now, to be fair, typically I do align more with conservatives. That's just my viewpoints to
right,
align more. But there are times when maybe you're not as red as what I would like to see you be. But again,
right.
that doesn't mean that something unjust hasn't happened to you. So anyway,
Exactly.
so that was kind of interesting, that experience, to have someone basically try to, I felt like they were
Well,
trying to mar her character to prevent me from being supportive of her. And I was like, it doesn't work like that in my world. Like, that's, if I feel called to support someone, like, you need to give me facts of the case. Tell me the facts of the case, because I don't think we should not support someone if
right.
something wrong has happened to them. But everyone's different.
And
Each their
and
own.
what's interesting, she didn't do anything wrong. She just showed a police sticker, got singled out, and now some student that gets his feelings hurt is going to make or break the difference between all the money that she spent to be able to be in at the school with a second location and have a business. The other thing I want to point out that I thought a little bit earlier in our interview is what some people might come back. Their comment about you might be, well, you told the police officer to arrest you. You are technically breaking the law, as those guys in the buckets are technically breaking the law with disorderly conduct, or whatever the case may be. But one thing that I think your situation points out, especially when it pertains to COVID, is that we get liberals or people that are more government minded, we'll say. They're
Yeah.
they're they're more of a bureaucratic agent, if you will. They're within that government system where
Yeah.
they have enough control to have laws and rules created, which basically cross that line between an orderly civilization and stepping on our freedoms. And when it comes to the COVID laws, especially where you're in a park, in a public playground, and you're technically breaking the law, but it's kind of a rule that was kind of put in place randomly by an elected official who, whether they're liberal or Republican, they're probably liberal minded. They see it as a way of conforming, and they see it as a way of gaining control over people, stepping on our freedoms. Now, a somebody who's an attorney, or they're working for the government, or they're in the courts, might say, well, she was breaking the law, she deserved it. But for you, you're basically standing for freedom, and these laws need to go through a should we need to stand for freedom, not just for freedom's sake, but to stand for freedom against these willy-nilly laws. I know it's a weird way to say it, but these laws that get created that work against our freedom, which really don't help with society or an organized society. So, and Carrie, go back to where the coffee shop is. Again, it's like her rights are being trampled on, and she did nothing wrong. So her standing up for freedom is great. I want to tell you another step. I want to step. We've talked about the dresses in the beginning. I want to get to that a little bit and cover that a little bit, because you do this thing where you dress up in these dresses. Can you explain how you got that idea and what you do with that?
Yeah, just real quick, I'm going to
It's
go
it's
back because
it's
I want
it's
to
it's
address.
it's it's a conservative approach, by the way, to the LGBTQ who dress up. Men dress up as women to read stories to kids. You dress up conservatively, patriotically to spread capitalism and freedom-minded people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So real quick, I'm going to go back to what you said to the people who are like, well, just, just you were breaking the law. Um, I was not breaking the law when I was at the playground, which is one of the reasons why I was so mad that the officer had counted down to me. Is that I literally was not in an area that had ever been closed off, and nobody in the news wanted to talk about that because it was confusing, right? Because of course it was confusing. The playground's
Right.
closed off, but the whole park's open. So just to know that. But I would also say to them, well, Rosa Parks was straight up breaking the law. They're on the bus. Now here's the deal. So who gets to decide when somebody can break a law for whatever their cause is?
Exactly.
Here's the deal. You're a straight up
Exactly.
American if you're breaking the law for a good moral cause and you have a good reason. I'm not talking about people that are selling drugs to kids. Okay, we're not. Don't take
Right.
words out of my mouth. So back to my
Yeah.
dresses. The first dress.
You're By the way, you're amazing, and I want to thank you
Oh,
for that. That the information you just provided with that answer, I want to highlight right now. That was a spectacular way to put it. Thank you very much. So back
oh,
to the
sure.
dresses.
I've heard it all, so I've always got some sort of thing to come back to. But yeah, so my dress is the very first dress I actually wore. This is such an interesting thing about my life is I wore it to a policeman's ball for the officer that Sarah Findlay was engaged to. Back years ago, this was probably 2016, 17. And so my first dress was actually the top was black with white stars, and it was a black and white stripe, and it had a big beautiful blue thing. I could give you a picture, but that was the first dress. And then it's over time I'm trying to
Maybe we
remember.
do that. Maybe maybe send me some pictures later of
Sure.
that, and I'll
Yeah.
put that in the Facebook post for people to see.
Sure, absolutely. And so, then after my arrest, I went and saw Candace Owens, and I wore a an American flag dress. Now I want to be clear: I was not breaking flag code. If you actually read flag code, it has to be an
Right.
actual flag. I never
Right.
chop up American flags. I take fabric that's sitting on a bolt. I take fabric, it's red and white stripes. That does not make it an American flag. It's blue with white star. That does not make it an American flag. And I create designs. If you're so caught up in your head that you think that I'm breaking flag code, I would encourage you to maybe find something else to do with your time because I am not burning
Right.
it, nor am I defecating on it. Let me like to me,
Right.
I
But
think
when the liberals do that, it's okay.
well, and that's
When
free
the
speech,
liberals do
right?
it, it's free speech as long as they're burning down a building with it.
Right. 100%. So I truly believe that Betsy Ross loves me and loves the dresses that I make with the American flag. I know she's over here high-fiving me in heaven. So I don't really care what the liberals or anyone else says. I'm going to make dresses that I feel like because there's a difference between when you burn it and you're defecating on it. When I do it, it's an honor. I'm trying to glorify something that I think is a representation of America. Again, agree with you, don't agree with me. So I did American flag, and then I did a Trump dress. That was my first. I did a cute Trump dress, and it was blue with his campaign for 2020. And then I've done, I mean, tons of dresses, right? I mean, like, so the dress behind me, that's my most recent dress. Um, this is I did it 2 days after Trump's assassination or attempted assassination, and that just says America's comeback because when that happened to him and he gets right back up, I'm like,
Right.
oh my gosh, that's. I mean, even if you're not political, to me, I'm like, isn't that the representation of even just the human spirit? The human spirit
Right.
that when it gets knocked down, I mean, the getting back up, right? I mean, just I get tingles just thinking about it. I'm like,
It's a
someone that
comeback, right?
literally
Yeah.
just got taken out and they're standing back up and they're like, they're not running off and being, I mean, he's standing up, he looks at people and he puts his fist in there. I'm like, talk about courageous and brave. And like,
Right.
whether you like Trump or not, you have to admit that there's some, just some, it's iconic to me. Anyway, so
Right.
I've done tons of dresses and basically it's a gift that I feel like I have that I enjoy sharing with people. I just enjoy um I just enjoy showing the love I have for America. I mean, like, America's so amazing. Like, there's nothing else like it. And
Right.
there's some things in it that I don't like and that I'm worried about for my children, and their posterity. But at the end of the day, it's America, and I'm going to enjoy it while I can. I'm not going to sit here and like I don't know. Like I'm gonna keep fighting till the bitter end. I'm just gonna be that girl. So
Sarah, you are amazing, and I love and when I saw you with the dresses on, because in Milwaukee, I think you did 3 different ones, or was it 2 different ones?
yeah,
'Cause
No, I did
I
3.
saw you
Yep.
yeah, I saw you 3 different days, you had 3 different dresses on. I think I got pictures with you with 2 of them. And when I see that, now, of course, when people look at the picture, they're gonna go, "Of course, there's it's a beautiful woman in a beautiful dress. Of course, it brings a smile to your face." But, it wells up a certain amount of patriotism, in your heart to see somebody that's passionate. No different than when I see it, and I joke about this. You go to an event and you see some guy dressed up like George Washington, or he's got a patriotic outfit on, and there's a part of you that goes, "Oh, some guy dressed up or some girl dressed up like." But then when you think for an extra second, you realize how not only patriotic that person is, but it brings out a feeling of patriotism in your heart that also ignites a little bit more passion. And for me, it ignited a little bit more. Wow, if you're bold enough and daring enough to do that, it makes me want to be able to talk about it a little bit more. It makes me want to be a little bit more passionate about our country. But it's also as indiscreet as it is, it's also another way to ignite other people's passion. When they see you doing that, they go, wow, what can I do to be able to share America with other people? And you did that. And all the dresses are not, they're not, so over the top in their statement. They're just a subtle enough expression, that I think it spreads a great message. And I got to tell you, I compliment you on them. That's going to be a lot of work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it depends upon the dress. Some dresses are easier than others, of course. I really, I pride myself. In the beginning, I tried to make a lot of them like from scratch. Now, though, if you know anything, and this is just a side thing, it's not politics at all. If you know how many clothes end up in a landfill, so what I started doing is like, if I already had the base of the dress, I would add the flair to it. Because usually wedding dresses are only worn once. Prom dresses are only usually worn once, right? All these formal nice dresses. And I was like, you know what? I should just start, instead of putting more stuff in the landfill. I should use what's already out there. So I have, I guess, a sustainability, which some conservatives don't take that very, but I think it's important that we don't, that we try.
Right.
I think God
Absolutely.
expects us to not be completely superfluous in our consumption. I really
Right.
do. I believe that. And so for me, I try to, and not all of my dresses, but a lot of them have actually ended up where I'm like, you know what? If I already have something, so some of them can take a really long time. Others, not so much. But I just really enjoy doing it. I got invited to a conservative fashion show next week. I found out 3 days ago. I'm flying to New York next week. I'm super excited. It's the first time I've ever been able to do anything like this, to combine my love of politics and fashion, and then go and showcase it, and then go and be around other people that get to do it. I mean, God blesses me so much. And the
I,
thing is like, every one of us has a gift. And that's what people need to realize, is they could look at me like, well, I don't have Sara Brady's gift. The thing is you have a gift that's very unique to you. And God expects you to make the effort to try to figure out what that is. And maybe it might not even be in politics at all. I don't know. Right? To me, your path is between you and God. I think everybody should try to do a little bit, though, because the thing is the more, I see some people. I'll give you an example. Okay, so because I'm so active and doing all of these other things that a lot of people don't use their time to do. Maybe they're at home watching TV, or I don't know, extracurricular stuff that I just don't prioritize, because to me there's other things that
right.
are more important. I judge them? No, I would like to see them go to, school board meetings or commissioner meetings or run for office. Of course I want to see them do that. But the thing
Right.
is there's a time and a place for everything. And I know at one point, and again, I couldn't have told you who the governor of Idaho was. So there's not, judgment. But recently, for example, I've had my RV on my front, like in the front part of my house. It's on the public road, and I've had the cops called on me a couple times, because RVs are only supposed to be parked in the public roadway. I think it's 72 hours, and then it's supposed to be moved. But the thing is where I live, it's a very, very laid back community. I mean, somebody down the
Right.
road has a semi trailer, but somebody, for whatever reason, and I will tell you, there's a lot of people in my area that are retirees from Washington or California, right? And in the good old growing up Idaho, you just don't call the neighbors on your, call the cops on your neighbors for things like this. But the thing is I know at the end of the day, maybe I'm not spending my time as much taking care of things that aren't immoral, but maybe annoy people. Like I switched out my couches. I had couches on my front on my driveway for like 3 weeks. Like it's been nice weather here. A neighbor complained at
Yeah,
the
poor
HOA
sofa.
meeting. Yeah, but so I'm from here being like, you know what? I would love to have so much time that there's nothing else important going on in the world that I could maybe get a little bit annoyed about what other people. But when I realize, William, you know why I don't is because I'm so focused on supporting somebody at court who's gone through a completely horrendous experience. I'm
Right.
so focused on making dresses, right? I'm so focused on other things, and I would encourage your listeners, if you have extra time, use your extra time wisely. Use it to do something that's going to build America or build your community, those sorts of things, right? So I don't know. I am human. I will be honest. I am a human, and I do get a little annoyed at neighbors that maybe think that I don't know. But at the end of the day, I know that I'm spending my time doing the appropriate thing. So I don't
I
continue to
got I
do
got a
that.
couple last questions for you while we wrap up here for the
Yeah.
next. We'll wrap up the next couple of minutes, but a couple more questions, just some simple ones. After all that you've been through and all the work that you do with your dresses and the things that you do for other people, support of our community, what do you think, or where do you think freedom is most under attack in America?
Most under attack. Um.
Where are we losing freedom the most in America?
Oh, geez. There's so many
And
areas.
exactly, but obviously, so when
Okay. Well, I will
it's
tell you.
interesting.
My
Go ahead.
complete biggest concern, having gone through this, it is such a big deal. It is such a big deal. Speedy trial. And now here's the deal. It's not happening right now. It's not happening right now because COVID doesn't exist, right? But the thing is the next thing is going to exist, whatever that is. If we cannot completely shore that up, that someone, the little man, the little woman, the little person always has their right to that, to me is the biggest concern. Are we losing it fast? Well, the fact that we would ever lose it at all is a huge concern because you think about this. If the government can
Right,
prosecute you indefinitely, nobody has any. Here's the deal. There's not a million Sara Brady's who somehow God gave me some amazing gift that I could keep going. That was complete. There's not enough Americans that have the right, because even I was blessed because enough people knew about my case they could help me pay for it, right?
right,
I didn't have to go, but I was going to mortgage my house if I didn't have the money to pay for the lawyers. But thank God, every time I got to the point, it was taken care of. So I
right,
really think people need to be looking at the judicial system, because all these other things can go wrong, but if the judicial system is running people over, that's kind of, to me, where freedom
right,
makes a dead heart screeching halt. Because again, if it's an unjust thing, if you have jurors, this is something I saw. Jurors that were not educated, jurors that were not educated would find people guilty. I've seen it happen because they were given specific instructions by the judge. I had one individual come to me, I can't tell you who it is, but came to me after a case and said, it was a young man. I was so confused. I feel awful. I found that woman guilty and my heart told me not to, because the bailiff, or I can't remember, whoever I think the officer's called was it a bailiff? Anyway, it's the law enforcement person. That's the court law enforcement. He said all of this stuff that I had to do, and I was like, they don't understand jury nullification. The jury does not understand jury nullification. That if it's an immoral law, that people need to look at that. I mean, so anyway, I would say that we're losing the quickest in the judicial system,
uh,
and have lost
that's
it for years.
that's not only a great answer that I absolutely because I've had some similar thoughts on that I can appreciate, but I appreciate that you shared it with us, and it's one of the most unique answers I've had to that question in a long time. So thank you. My last question for you is, we have an election coming up. Of course, we could spend days and weeks, but we're not going to. We're going to just spend a couple minutes. There's a disparity between the two candidates, and we all know that, you and I would probably agree that there's going to be, one that would lead us towards, I would say, more government, more control, and less freedom, and one that would lead us to more prosperity in America, and a little bit more freedom, and be able to stop the growth of government. Where do you think that Donald Trump could do, or what do you think he could do to help increase his voting base for this election or reach more people? What do you think that he could do to be able to win this election?
Well, I mean, personally, for me, when I look at him, I don't. I think he's doing everything that he can. I think that here's the deal: when you look at the two candidates, who is getting attacked more? And shouldn't that tell you exactly
Right.
all that you need to know? So it's, I don't think he, I think he needs to continue to be himself. And then his trolls and all these people are going to, it's just kind of like with my case. They expose their true colors just by being themselves. And
Great
Donald
point.
Trump is helping show that. Look at all of the stuff that, I mean, like all the things happening with the justices. With, oh, we're gonna delay this case until after the election. All the things. To me, he'll just continue to do it. And here's the deal. I want to have faith in the election process. I want to have faith in it. Okay.
That's right.
At this point, there's been a lot of stuff that's come up the last couple of years that I'm very concerned about it. I'm deeply concerned about it. And I do believe, though, I think we get the president we deserve. And sadly, though, there could be a small chunk of us doing everything we can, but if the majority of America is asleep, we're going to get the government that's the
Exactly.
equation of that. Do I like that? No, but I'm aware enough that that's how it's worked, and that's been a process in the making for many years to dumb down America, right? And to also to laden our backs with so much taxes and so much, right? We're not really I mean, sure, compared to other countries, we're flourishing, but we're not as flourishing as what we used to be. Inflation's at an all-time high. I mean, do you know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
like um gas. So it's like it's even difficult for the people who want to be involved. How do people get involved when they just are trying to put food on the table for their kids,
Right.
right? When they're literally just trying to. So when you look at it, I have complete faith in the future. I just do. No matter what happens, we have to look up. Look up. Look up, for your redemption is nigh. And the thing is being negative about things, being frustrated, looking at the dark stuff, that does not grow. The energy you put onto things, if you put it on negative stuff, that is going to grow. I choose to
That's
put
right.
my energy on the positive things, on the things that I can change, all of those things. And I think individually, we all have to do that. No matter what the future holds for us, individually, we have to fortify ourselves. We have to fortify our families. We have to do our best. We have to be as positive as we can while being realistic. Um, and I think it goes back to, like, loving God and loving your neighbors yourself. And if you can run up to those things and try to have all of your principles come from that, all the law and the prophets come from that, that to me, I think you're doing pretty good if you strive to be a loving person while still also trying to maintain your beliefs and your ideals.
Sarah, I have been deeply entranced with your words just now. I got to tell you, that was not only an amazing answer, but it's an amazing thought. And I might have to clip that little section out to make a special point of it, because not only did you stick up or say your opinion and stand behind your beliefs, but you used it in a positive way to encourage other people to get involved. And I couldn't agree with you more about, that we deserve the government that we get, because what I say regularly, and what I even said last night, I was with a group last night, that the biggest problem we have in our country is that the majority of people don't want to be involved. They don't get involved. They feel like their involvement doesn't make a difference, whatever the case may be. And we can all point fingers and say, the election got stolen, and there's lots of those that don't. I have friends that don't believe that the election got stolen, and I could say, whether you believe or not believe, if we all got involved in our election system, they wouldn't be able, not only would they not be able to steal it for those who believe it was or getting stolen, but we would have fair, honest elections with more qualified candidates. because part of the reason why we're getting the bad candidates that we're getting on local levels is because people aren't involved in their own communities. And so the bad ones sneak in, then we get bad government, and then everybody complains and everybody gets complacent, everybody gives up. And when they give up, then the bad elected officials do more harm. They create these COVID laws or whatever the case may be. They get in our judicial system. They get enough power because they have that narcissist mentality instead of a freedom-minded mentality. And then it, of course, changes. And that's where we're headed with the government that we deserve if we don't get involved. And your words of encouragement were not only beautiful and inspiring, but I think that's something that should be shared with many people. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time today. You're amazing.
Well, thank you. I
Any
mean, I do okay. I do okay. I just
Yeah,
try to be happy and I try to, encourage people, and I try to do my best. That's all, and then I also
any
accept that I'm human sometimes. I allow myself to be human, but I super appreciate you having me on the show. It's been a while since I've done a few interviews here and there, but yeah, this is probably the longest one I've done in a while, and I've really enjoyed it. And so keep up the good work, right?
Thank
Because
you.
we all have a part to play. So everyone, play your part, do your best.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hang on one second, Sarah, while I close out the show. Hold there for 1 minute, please. I want to thank everybody for their time. But more than that, I'm grateful for the time that you spent with us. And I'd be a little bit more grateful if you'd please share this show with somebody that you think not only needs to hear Sarah's story and be inspired a little bit, but somebody that needs a little bit of motivation to be involved, find their part where they can inspire other people, because the more people that we get involved, the more opportunity that we have, or the bigger chance that we have to be able to get a better government that we deserve from being involved. Please share the story, share the podcast, share the interview. Thank you so much, and have a great day.